All right, so thank you, everybody. In the interest of time and making sure everybody can get back to their respective lives this evening, we'll get the presentation started. Again, my name is Ryan McCune. I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing at Renova Solar. I'm here to speak with you all about community solar, but more importantly, I'm here to speak about solar in general. Renovis builds community solar farms all across New York State, but we also are one of, if not the largest residential installation company in New York, north of Long Island. We've built hundreds of solar systems for businesses, homes, nonprofits, all over the state. So we're here to talk to you about a couple of those systems, give you kind of an overview of what we do, how we do it, and why community solar is such an exciting proposition for everybody. Just a few housekeeping things. Feel free to ask questions anytime using the Q&A box up there. We will be doing a quick poll later in the presentation as well. But just for the interest of time, to make sure everything goes smoothly, I will not be answering those questions until the end of the presentation. So feel free to populate them in the Q&A area whenever you'd like. Just don't get discouraged if I don't answer them right away. We're happy to get to them, but we have a great deal of information to get through. And since it is a Tuesday evening, we want to make sure everyone gets back to their respective lives pretty quickly. So first things first, let's kind of dive into the Renovis side of things, who we are. Renova Solar started as a really small company doing energy systems from a broad spectrum of different areas back in 2003. We used to do solar hot water systems, small scale wind systems, as well as solar PV. Starting in around 2012, we switched over to only doing solar PV systems. And since then, we've built thousands of clean energy systems all across New York State. We've built systems as large as 2.5 megawatts, which can power hundreds of homes, and systems as small as 2.5 kilowatts, powering single tiny little homes. We're all about affordable, high quality, and simple solutions. The way that Renovis works is we have everything in-house, everything from construction to project management to engineering, sales and marketing, everything all under one roof. One thing that helps us do is be an end-to-end service for customers. We're not a small solar contractor who can't handle the volume of the work themselves, so they just install the panels but subcontract everything else. We do everything. And what happens when you do everything is it means you can be as responsive and as helpful as possible for customers. And as a result of our responsiveness and how much we care about our process, we're the community solar leaders in New York for private companies. There's been a large explosion of community solar, but no one is doing it like Renovis is, and no one who is a New York-based company is doing it like we do. So we're really proud to be the leaders of community solar here in New York State. As I mentioned, we do all types of systems. So we do commercial systems. You're seeing a small commercial system on the left there, top left, that we did for the SPCA of Tompkins County. We do larger commercial systems, including some systems we've done for breweries, school districts, manufacturers, a whole scope of different industries. We do small residential systems, as you see in the top right up there, but we also build community solar farms. So what you're seeing there is the first ever community solar farm that we constructed back in 2016, just up the road from Renovis in Ulysses, New York. And you can see in the background there, Cayuga Lake. So community solar for New York State was born in the Finger Lakes. It continues to grow in the Finger Lakes. And there's a great deal of opportunity for people to buy into these systems in the Finger Lakes. The reason we do this is that we live on a solar-powered planet. Obviously, that's pretty obvious. But the reality is that everything on this planet comes from the sun. Even the natural gas and the coal and some of the other dirtier power sources here on this planet all originated with photosynthesis, and thus every bit of energy we have on this planet has come from the sun. We have about 5 billion years of power left. So whereas we might only have, half a century or less of fossil fuels available for human consumption, we have a nearly infinite power source up above our heads in the sun. The sun powers everything, and we can harness that power to save you money and also make a pretty large dent in your climate impact. So the reality is that every hour enough sunlight hits the planet to supply the entire world's energy needs for a year. That is an incredible amount of power, and it's up to us to learn how to harvest it. So solar power in all of its different forms, whether it be solar PV, solar hot water systems, and all of their kind of subsidiaries, energy storage, etc., work to harness that energy and let us as human beings use that energy. So the reality is, if we were to cover just 0.08% of the globe's land area, we would be able to power all of humanity with solar panels. Most people often point to areas of the Sahara, for example, where we could cover a relatively small amount of the planet with solar panels and power literally all of humanity. Obviously, there's some very large technical challenges there as far as transmission of said power, etc. But the reality is that concentrated community distributed generation, what we're talking about here today, but concentrated deployment of small amounts of solar can power everything we do as humanity. We just need to be smart about it, and we need to have communities invest in it in smart ways. So often it's a misconception here in New York State that it's too cloudy, right? It's too cloudy. There's no way that you can have solar in New York State. What about the snow? What about this? What about that? Well, the reality is that New York State has about 90% of the solar resource of Florida. Over the course of the year, a solar system can produce more than enough energy, if sized correctly, to meet your needs. And that's true on both a residential scale and also on a utility scale, building hundreds of megawatts of solar plants in order to meet the demand that's being caused from shuttering coal, natural gas, and nuclear plants across the state. New York State is rapidly deploying solar because it works. We get 35% more sunlight than Germany. And since Germany got a jump start on this little thing called renewable energy, they now have 16 times more solar installed than the entire United States. That is a big deal. We have some catching up to do. We're doing it quickly, and we're deploying solar faster now than any time in history. But the reality is that economically it makes sense. And there's money behind it, there's practicality behind it, and there's intention behind it. And collectively, we can make a huge difference as far as the energy consumption patterns in the United States. So the reason that this all makes sense is because solar technology is actually not that new. Solar technology in some way, shape, or form is nearly a century old. Some of the first PV cells were simulated nearly 100 years ago. And over the years, that technology has improved in two distinct ways. A, it has improved in its efficiency, and B, it has improved in its cost effectiveness. Part of that cost effectiveness is derived from the fact that solar panels themselves and most of the components of solar systems are 99% recyclable. We're talking about glass, aluminum, silicon. Just like any electronics, there are small trace amounts of heavy metals in solar systems, but a solar system as a whole has significantly less environmentally harmful heavy metals than, say, even the phone in your hand or a laptop or computer you might be viewing this presentation on. Part of the power of solar systems is that they don't have any moving parts. Solar itself is completely static. It just sits there, it soaks up the sun, and it turns it into power that puts money in your wallet. The beauty of that is no moving parts means very little will break. You can own a power plant that will produce you decades of clean energy without ever having any interruptions at all in many cases. That really lends itself to solar's low cost, not only initially, but over time. So solar is growing as a result of all this. Every single year, more and more solar is installed across the world and across the United States. And a large driver of that solar revolution is not folks like yourself and myself, but rather large corporations and utilities across the country and the world. Some of the biggest companies in the world, including Walmart, Apple, Costco, Facebook, etc., are installing solar at a clip we haven't ever seen before in human history. And what that's doing is it's rapidly driving down the cost of solar. As you can see, back in 2009, the per watt cost of solar was north of $7 a watt. And now some of the systems that Renova is selling to customers like you can buy solar for as low as $2 a watt or less. It's a pretty incredible difference, but solar has leveled off. As you can see, starting in 2014-15, the solar prices started leveling off, and actually due to some tariffs and such, last year we saw the first increase in solar's cost in nearly 10 years. Granted, it was only about 0.25% increase, but it was still an increase. So now, as technology has caught up and solar costs of production have come down, solar costs have remained relatively stable. Part of the reason why we've been able to adopt so much solar in such a short time is things like the federal income tax credit. That tax credit was extended back in 2015, but it is going to start expiring this year. As soon as the clock hits midnight on December 31st, the income tax credit starts to descend. New York State also has tax credits associated as it drives towards its really ambitious goals. This New York goal actually has recently been updated to 100% renewable by 2050. So they've extended their already lofty goals about renewable power. So as we become a more electric dependent society, think about electric cars, all of our electronics in our homes, all of our individual appliances, and now even the advent of ground source, air source heat pumps and other things. Homes are going to use more electricity. The beauty is that with the advent of solar, there's more ways than ever to reduce those costs and become a net zero household. There are a ton of environmental benefits to going solar, but the reality is that most people will choose to go solar for a simple reason. It's going to save you a ton of money. Net metering gives you annualized production, so you don't need to worry about those rainy days, those cloudy days, and those wintry days in here in New York State, because we can overproduce in the summer months, and even if they're underproducing in the winter months, you're still going to enjoy the financial benefits of that solar system all year round. And on top of that, tax credit and rebates dramatically reduce the cost of these systems. In many cases, 55 to 60% of the total system cost is erased by incentives right off the top. So how does solar work? Solar itself is actually really derived from the PV module, but there's a whole bunch of different components that make these systems work. The PV modules themselves convert sunshine into electricity, but they need inverters in order to actually convert it into the DC electricity into AC electricity that can power your home. When you have solar panels on your roof, you might actually be consuming the electrons you produced on that roof, but the excess will actually go into your meter and go back into the grid. And with net metering, you actually get credit for the amount of power that you overproduce. These exact same principles are true with community solar. PV arrays on a separate location generate electricity. The electricity goes through inverters and then ultimately ends up back in the meter. And when you own a portion of a community solar farm, you actually own a portion of the power that's produced at any given point. That power is given a financial credit, which is then transferred to your bill. So when we have an on-site system, we always we do a usage and site evaluation, a custom proposal, and then we install the system with lifetime workmanship guarantees and installation guarantees. Renova's really, its bread and butter is on-site solar systems. We don't want you to think in any way, shape, or form that we do not do these types of systems. We install them, hundreds a year, I think over 350 systems, residential systems in upstate New York, we installed last year, and we stand by the performance of these systems with long-term warranties. But now we have community solar. The reality is, between a combination of financing options, ownership structures, shading, etc., about 80% of the homes in the United States are not suitable for on-site solar. And community solar can service every single person in the United States. Whether you rent or you own, you can use some of these panels on a community solar farm to generate energy credits that will offset your utility bills. The beauty of this is that you get a lower cost community solar system in an area with a perfect solar resource, meaning that it couldn't be better in your area. And we have more experience than anybody in New York State at building these systems. We built the first back in 2015-16, and this needs to be corrected, but we've actually built our 15th this year. So we've built over 15 systems in the past 3.5 years. So as I mentioned, this clean energy is generated by the utility in your area. That energy is actually sent back into the grid, and then you get energy credits, so financial credits for that energy, and it gets sent back to your bill on what's called on-bill crediting. The utility zones used to be a much bigger concern than they are now, but the reality is that if you're a NYSEG customer, you can be serviced by any farm in NYSEG territory. If you're a National Grid customer, you can be serviced by any farm in National Grid territory. And these individual NYSIO zones don't matter nearly as much. So regardless of if a solar farm is in Buffalo and you're in Albany, you can get serviced by that farm as a National Grid customer. If you're an RG&E customer and there's a farm in Victor, but you live in Irondequoit, you can get serviced. The same is true for somebody who maybe has a solar farm up in Plattsburgh, but they live in Corning. Those folks can get serviced by the same farm because they're both serviced by NYSEG. So just like an on-site system, community solar projects are sized for you, and there's no limitation to how large they can be. And this creates a unique set of benefits. On-site systems have limitations about how large they can be because of how much of a system needs to be fed back into the grid directly. Because community solar systems are built in areas with an ideal solar resource and really an ideal grid interconnection point, they can be as large as they need to be to meet your needs. A solar farm like this might power 100 homes, or depending on if it's there's several large customers, it might only power 50 homes. Your upfront investment all but replaces your electrical bill. So when you custom size for your needs and you custom size for those limitations, you get a loan or pay for in cash that solar system that produces free power for you for the next 25 years guaranteed, and it'll likely produce power for you for free for up to 40 or more years. We cover the insurance, operations, and maintenance in a small operations and maintenance fee that's charged yearly. And we handle all of the concerns around the solar system. If anything ever were to break, it'll get replaced immediately. If there was ever any catastrophic events, the insurance, et cetera, for all the system would handle that. And the last but most powerful thing about community solar that is super important to understand is that it's flexible. When you put panels on your roof or on the ground in your property, those panels are going to remain there unless you want to incur a cost of removing them and taking them to a new property for some reason. The reality is, because solar can sometimes add as much as $2.50, $3 a watt to the value of your home, you might want to leave them there because you can monetize it and actually claim a significant amount of revenue off that system down the line. The beauty of community solar is that you can actually move with that system. So say you're moving from Ithaca down the road from us, and you're deciding that you're going to move over to Binghamton. It doesn't matter. All you need to do is call Renova, say, hey guys, I'm moving. Here's my new address, my new meter number, and we can actually send those solar credits from the farm to your new home in as little as a month. And if you move again in another month, we can do it again in another month, and so on and so on and so on. It's very powerful, very flexible, and it lets you invest in something that can follow you wherever your life takes you. These solar farms are great for the environment for a couple different reasons. One, as I mentioned, the farms themselves are almost 99% recyclable. And more importantly, they're totally decommissionable. So these projects are almost uniformly pile driven, meaning we take steel I-beams, we stick them deep into the ground, and there's no concrete there, meaning that the farmland that we might be using, whether it be fallow farmland or a brownfield, can be completely reclaimed when the solar farm is decommissioned. This is what would be called organic land management. So when we're reclaiming the land and we're not using any pesticides or any type of other chemicals on the land, we're actually helping to bring the soil back to its natural state. We have some different ways of helping to do that, including planting native grasses, wildflowers on our farms. Some different farms have beehives on them, for example. And a very common thing we do to help the land is to actually bring sheep and other livestock onto the land. And they actually help mow the grass for us. So it's a great beneficial arrangement where farmers will rent out their sheep to us for grass management, and then they in turn actually help replenish the health of that soil as well. So let's dive into the interesting part of a solar system. So electricity is, I wouldn't say it's expensive on a per unit basis, but the more we electrify our lives, electricity is becoming a larger and larger part of our monthly utility bills. The combination of electric consumption and demand charges is growing as a portion of the utility bill every single year. And even as recently as Memorial Day, NYSEG customers got a nasty surprise when NYSEG announced a 24% rate increase for many of the demand charges that their customers are incurring. So 25 years where they say you have an $84 bill with a $16 meter fee, so $100 a month of electricity-based charges. Over 25 years without inflation, you're going to be spending more than $30,000 on that system. And if you account for inflation, you're going to be spending almost $40,000 on your electricity. That is money that you are never going to get back. There's no equity there. You're paying straight into the grid ecosystem, consuming that power. And that's just money flowing out of your pocket. So the goal with solar is to reverse that trend, to build equity in something and to give yourself control over those electric expenses. So the cost of community solar is scalable based on how much solar you need. But in this scenario, we might end up in a situation where you needed around 8 kW, so 8 kilowatts, nearly 8,000 watts of solar panels, around 23 panels. And the total cost of that system would be around $15,000. So that's a $15,000 top line cost, but you have access to a myriad of different tax credits that can eliminate up to $10,000 of that system's cost if you're eligible. We always caution folks, make sure you talk to your accountant before counting on this and before signing a contract. But the vast majority of folks who make kind of median incomes in their individual communities will be able to utilize the full amount of this solar resource and this tax exempt resource in year one. So that means that your upfront solar investment is really only $5,000. And when you finance a system like that, it means that you can put as little as $500 down on the system, erase your utility bills, and replace it with a financed loan in very short order. In addition to those fees, you have a monthly solar farm fee of around $3 a watt per year. And that for this same system would amount to about $20. So on the left, we have your grid electricity. And what you're doing right now, in all likelihood, has an upfront cost of $0. You're spending around $84 a month on your electrical bills, plus your utility meter fees of $16. And as we mentioned, with inflation over the next 25 years, you're going to be spending upwards of $40,000 on your electricity. So on the right, let's compare that to a community solar investment. So you're going to have an upfront cost of around $5,000, but now your monthly electrical costs go down to $0. Your monthly grid fees are still $16 because you can't get rid of that meter fee, but you have an operations and maintenance fee of around $19.55 a month, meaning that 25 years electricity for you is going to be $16,655. If you do the math there, that means that your solar savings over 25 years are going to be north of $22,000 for going with community solar and taking control of your energy consumption rather than paying into the grid. Additionally, now you are paying into an equitable asset that's going to continually kick back money to you in the form of energy credits for much longer than 25 years. So the same general principles are true for community solar versus on-site. Community solar produces slightly smaller dollars per kilowatt on a utility basis, but on-site projects tend to be a little bit less efficient because they're not out in a wide open field with a southern facing land that's flat. On-site projects tend to be slightly more expensive due to the custom construction, so there's a cost benefit there, but both on-site and community solar projects represent huge savings over the utility. On-site projects don't have any monthly O&M fees, but in reality, whether or not you choose a community solar project or an on-site solar project, you are very likely going to be saving anywhere from $19,000 to $25,000, or sometimes even more if you have a $100 a month bill over the lifetime of the system. So what does it look like when you actually start getting solar credits? This is an example of a monthly NYSEG bill for a community solar customer. So we see their electricity charges up there on the top right, about $151 of electricity charges. And then down below, we see these total miscellaneous charges, and that's CDG generation credit. CDG stands for Community Distributed Generation, and their solar system generated $135.92 of electricity. They erased their bill almost entirely, and all they had to worry about was a very small leftover amount. That's true for on-site systems as well, except for the difference is that you won't see that CDG generation credit. You'll just see miscellaneous charges that zero out your electricity. So the reality is with Renova's, because we are a small local company, our customers have and always will be the most important thing to us. The most important asset we have as a company is the people that we serve. We have a customer happiness department in our office. We have a group of sales folks and service folks that are unparalleled in their experience. And we also have high technology solutions that let you monitor both on-site and off-site solar systems in real time to understand exactly what your solar investment is producing at any given time. If you go to renovasolar.com and head over to our clients, there's a little section on monitoring. If you go into that section, you can actually check out some of these monitoring platforms live and play around with them to see exactly what it would look like to monitor your own solar system. If you go on Facebook or Google, you will see that we're a 5-star company. We have been serving this region for longer than anybody, and we have seen everything. And our customers love us for it. We stand by our products, we stand by our systems, and even when there are unpredictable circumstances, we will always go the extra mile to make sure our customers are taken care of. Part of this responsibility as being a customer-centric company is that we needed to find creative ways to help people purchase solar. We have actually helped create some of the first of their kind solar loans in New York State through partners like Alternatives Federal Credit Union, Tompkins Trust Company, Visions Credit Union in the Southern Tier. And now, as a result of Renova's advocacy across the state, there's a significant amount of people who have access to solar loans that they did not have access to 5 years ago. And what this means is that now you can get either personal or unsecured loans, you can get home equity loans, and regardless of what you choose, your payments will be lower than your electrical bill. We can almost guarantee this unless you choose very short terms or for whatever reason have financial circumstances that are highering your rates. Obviously, cash purchases are always welcome as well, but we're here to help you figure out exactly what is the best option. The vast majority of our customers choose to finance these systems, and as a result, we have great relationships with banks and credit unions across the state, and we can get you the type of financing that you need that'll give you the best possible deal on solar, and we can make it quick and we can make it easy for you. So obviously, we shouldn't talk about solar without talking about the environmental impact of a system. And let's loop back and look at that same 7.8 kW system. So that 7.8 kW system is going to be producing around 227,000 kilowatt hours for 25 years. And that equals 160 metric tons of CO2 that you're offsetting by using solar. That's equivalent to 170,000 plus pounds of coal being burned, 18,000 gallons of gasoline, or nearly 4,000 trees sequestering carbon for that same amount of time. It's an extremely powerful investment that can make a tangible impact on not only your fiscal expenses, but also your carbon footprint. And there's very few things out there, very few investment opportunities that truly let you take control of your impact on the environment in this way. All right, so we're going to go ahead and stop the recorded portion of this presentation, but go ahead and answer some questions. Looks like we got about seven different questions in there for now. I'm sure there will be other ones that roll in. For those who don't want to stick around for the Q&A, we really thank you for joining us. We hope that you learned something about community solar today. We hope you learned something about Renova's. And most importantly, we hope you learned about solar and what it can mean for you, your home, or your business. It's an extremely powerful resource. There's extremely powerful reasons to choose renewable energy, be it solar, hot water systems, or PV systems. And we want you to know that as advocates for renewable energy, Renova's will help you no matter which path you choose. Feel free to call us, leverage our expertise, and we'll be there for you in whatever way we can. All right, so now on to the question and answer section.